tough morning here. Got with Andy Green a few hours ago, and just let Andy know that he wouldn't be the manager of the Padres going forward, that we were going to relieve him of his duties. He's a guy obviously here that from a personal standpoint, definite friend. Talked to Andy more than I've spoken to mom and dad here in the last 4 years. So I think a lot about him as a baseball manager. Think about him as a person. And just overall, as we sat down and watched the club, I think we knew over the last 3 or 4 years we were trying to build towards something in terms of building up our talent base, building up our organization, and trusted Andy in the development of young players. He did a good job in terms of looking at the last few years and getting our group into a better position. I think this year we were all really excited in the first half. We felt like we had seen a lot of progress, and there were players that were, overall the group was starting to progress towards what we were trying to get to and move towards a playoff berth. And the last few months just hasn't really happened for us. And I think as you look at these things, it's tough calls, but felt like that if we're going to get where we need to get in the playoffs, get this franchise where a perennial contender into October, felt like we needed to make a change on that manager seat. And in terms of the timing, just over the last few days, I think as it became clear to me that this was something I felt like we needed to do as an organization if we wanted to move forward. I just wanted to be real clear with Andy. We have a good relationship, and didn't really see playing out this last week where we've had a lot of important conversations, a lot of conversations with coaches, staff, players, things geared towards next year. If in my mind I didn't see Andy as the manager going forward for us, I wanted to make sure that didn't want to go through that process and then have to basically look him in the eye and say something different here in a few days. Felt like it was important for me to sit down with the players and the staff and have an honest conversation. So tough day overall. I think in terms of looking forward, we'll start the process of finding the next manager and finding a guy that we feel like we have a lot of talent throughout the system, feel like we have a lot of talent at the big league level. We need that talent to play out on the field and start playing towards competitive baseball for a whole season and not just for a period of time. So, questions?
How difficult was it to make this decision for you in the organization?
Yes, anytime you're talking about removing somebody of their duties, and these are people that you grind with all year. I mean, from a coaching staff standpoint, you're at the ballpark for 10, 12, 14 hours. You're on the phone at 2 a.m., 4 a.m. I think you share a common goal. Andy's, like I said, he's a friend, so that's those are really tough decisions and tough calls. Ultimately, report to Ron and Peter, owe it to the fans of San Diego. In my heart, you got to look out, and if you feel like there's a better way to go, feel like we need to make that call.
You gave him an extension not too terribly long ago. What changed between now and then?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the course of the last few years, you evaluate these things on a yearly basis. I had a lot of conversation with Andy going into the season about things that we felt like that we wanted to see from the team standpoint, wanted to see from self-managing people as a leader of the club, and just throughout the year, I felt like especially as we got to the last few months. Just felt like that a couple of those things that we had talked about just didn't really see enough progress at a fast enough rate. And again, like when you look at the team, I feel like we have more talent and have a better club than the way we're playing right now. And just feel like, again, different voice, different direction was needed at the time.
What kind of voice, what kind of direction, what kind of manager are you looking for now going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think a really big question is experience, not experience. Again, somebody ultimately, we have young talent. We've got to turn that talent into consistent winning players at the major league level. We feel like, and with a player like Manny Machado, we've got a guy that's should be a perennial top 30 player in the league, top 20 player in the league, perennial all-star. With Eric Hosmer, you got a guy that we view as a glue type player that's been part of a lot of winning situations, been in all-star games, won a World Series. You got to get those overall manager that can get those guys to play at their level and overachieve. And that's the idea about what you're looking for from your coaching staff, and that's what the managerial search will be about.
AJ, you guys are constantly evaluating your talent and your staff. At what point in the season were you starting to realize that maybe Andy wasn't going to be the guy moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's probably more come into focus over the course of the last month. I think like the evaluation process, the first thing you look at honestly is constantly, baseball operations, the product that goes out on the field, it starts with myself. It starts with our baseball operations team. Take that serious. pretty clearly. We've got to do a better job. We've got to do a better job of getting this team into a spot that we're in a better place. And over the last month, trying to look out and constantly try to say, okay, do we have, as a product that we don't have enough talent, and we don't have enough talent to play as a postseason team, or do we feel like there's a little bit more that we can get out of the guys that we currently have in the clubhouse? Obviously, it came to the decision that I feel like there's a little bit more that we can get out of that group. And overall in the last few days kind of made the call in my mind. I think we understood going into this year, you're dealing with young starting pitchers. We're trying to speed up the development of those young pitchers, and I think what we really look at is, our guys improving on a daily basis? Is the team improving on a weekly basis? And again, I think with Andy, you try to be realistic with any manager and any coach. You try to be realistic in what we have. I feel like when we made the decision, we're realistic in what we're asking him to do with some of the situation of dealing with a younger roster, but still feel like we're a better club than we've shown here in the second half of the season.
What's the message to the clubhouse at this point? Message to the clubhouse right now?
Yeah, I think it's never a fun day when you sit down with the players. I think the biggest thing was just talking to the players and being honest. I look in the mirror and I know that I've got to get this thing better. I think for the players, I know for looking for guys to be accountable, explain that as we sit down here in the next week and over the course of the next few months in the off season, are going to be crystal clear in terms of expectations, in terms of what we're looking for from an organization standpoint, from Ron, Peter, myself, new manager. Just want to explain that if you're gonna be an everyday position player for the Padres, this is what we expect. If you're going to be a starting pitcher for the Padres, this is what we want to expect. We want feedback, from that group. Try to learn from the experience over the last year. Try to learn from the experience over the last few months. Those were a few of the things that we talked about today.
AJ, did you weigh player feedback in the decision at all? And as you were coming to this decision, what was your sense of the relationships between Andy and the players in terms of relatability and all that stuff?
I think honestly, it was mostly performance. It was mostly looking at some process type stuff, some challenges that we put in front of Andy over the course of the last year. I think and I think just watching the club and seeing the I think the way we've not played real well here in the last few months. The idea, the concept of losing a clubhouse, anything like that, I don't feel that's the case. Andy's got good relationships with guys in there. You're always going to have different personalities. You're going to have guys that think different things about everybody. I know the biggest thing with Andy is he, for the last 4 years, and what I try to explain to the players in there, and I know they feel, he woke up every single morning trying to get the best out of that group. He loves the Padres. He loved those players. He loved pushing those guys. Sometimes some players will appreciate that. Sometimes some players don't appreciate that. But I know, from Andy, it always came from a good place, and the place was trying to get the Padres in a better spot.
Do you have a
Were you
list
and Andy on the
already
same
of potential candidates?
Hey, Marty,
I'm sorry, were you and Andy on the same page? You said there's no disconnect with the players. You had a good relationship with the players. Did you have that same sort of relationship? Was there any sort of disagreement between yourself and Andy Green?
I've heard that. I think Darren's always asked me that over the years on the air and stuff. That's honestly this idea of being on the same page. Yeah, we've been on the same page with in terms of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to build, the way you go about building a championship product, championship team. That wasn't the reason for a decision. I think it really came down to just looking at a group that we felt like can perform better, play better. Looking at the last few months and definitely the last few weeks and seeing a group that when you're looking at our guys playing at their level, they're playing at the level they've been accustomed to playing in the past, or are they overachieving? And when a bunch of those things came back, no. I think from my standpoint, clearly got to make some changes on my end as well. But just felt like maybe a different voice, different person in that spot would be important.
When you say that, though, do you think that the players were tuning him out? When you say different voice, did you get the sense the players were tuning him out towards the end?
Honestly, I don't. Not really positive on that part of it. It's hard for me to say 100%. I just know that what we're watching nightly, guys are capable of playing better. So I don't get that sense 100 that the people are looking at it and saying they don't want to play, they didn't want to play for Andy or anything like that. I didn't feel that. But again, it's a production industry. Fans want to watch a team that plays well, and didn't see that over the course of the second half. Yeah, so Rod will be the interim manager here for the rest of the way. We'll sit down here as a group over the course of the next week or so and start putting a candidate list together. Rod's obviously had a lot of success in the minor leagues. He's been a big part of the coaching staff here this year. But we'll sit down here when we get probably when the season ends and start putting together the candidate list that we want to interview for the full-time job.
Hey, Jerry, why do this with 8 games to go?
Yeah, I think the big part of that call, again, I think for us, a lot of, in the last week of the season, gives us a little head start. We sit down with all of our players, staff, exit interviews, talking to them about what went well, what we can do better, and just felt like, again, if Andy wasn't going to be the manager going forward. Didn't really see the value in us going that last week. And having to kind of retrace our steps as we go forward. So a little bit, out of respect to him, a little bit out of respect to the process. Again, you just want to be clear. And in my mind, when I felt like he's wanted to make a change, wanted to go in a different spot with the manager, just felt like let's use this last week to be productive and just be straight up with him and let him know that we're going to make the change.
Was he surprised by the news?
Yeah, he handled it with, I'm honestly tremendous class. He was, first rate all the way. I think he was, my guess is probably a little surprised with the timing of it. But he was, I think, very appreciative of the opportunity. He was very honest in terms of feeling that, he took blame for it, which wasn't looking for and don't believe in. But he was, hey, I didn't get it done. I believe happy for the opportunity. I'll learn from this and I'll grow. And it was honestly a tough conversations, but he handled it first class.
You mentioned you need to make some changes as well. Do you know what those changes are that you need to make?
Get some better players in terms of production on the field that leads us to winning some games. No, I mean, I think you go through these situations with your manager. It was the first time I had gone through the managerial process. In terms of dealing day to day, in terms of hiring, in terms of working and partnering with the manager. I learn every single day. I learn from the people that are around me. I learn from the people that I work with. I learned a ton from Andy over the last few years. And you're going to take those experiences and make sure that when you go to when we go get this right here in the next few months and the next few weeks and get the right person in place, I'll learn from a lot of different areas in terms of communication, in terms of how to say certain things, in terms of being, in terms of being real clear in terms of what we need to get done, in terms of being a better listener. I think you take all those experiences from what I've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, and hopefully it'll lead to a good decision here going forward.
Have
Do you
some
feel
of
you're
the
still in the?
players been mailing it in, particularly last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the biggest thing I know is that we're better than what we've shown, and why that is, at this time of year, is it are there reasons for that? Is it motivation? Is it is it injuries? Is it lack of talent? It doesn't really matter. I think that's what I've talked to Ron and Peter about. The biggest thing is let's go play well. Let's go play up to our ability. And I think when you don't see that, we'll use the next few weeks and months to try to dig a little deeper in terms of how we get guys to come and play and perform up to the level that we need them to be. But I think the bottom line for us, it just hasn't been good enough here in the last, and it's not just the last week. It's really since the second half began, and just hasn't been good enough. And that's what we've got to tackle.
Do you feel your timeline is still to compete next season? Has anything slowed down at all with any of this?
No, I mean, I think we've talked about it before. I think in baseball, I don't really believe it. If we looked up this year and it was 78 wins instead of whatever it ends up being, it was 81 wins. There's kind of different ranges in terms of how you play, what happens on the field, and it's not necessarily a linear process. It's not like you go from 78 to 81 to 84 to 90. I mean, we've seen teams throughout the league, teams that are going to play in October this year that have had the process over the last few years where they'll go from 69 wins to playing in the postseason. There have been teams in the past, whether it be the Twins and the Braves, that have gone from worst to first. So I think for us, it's more a situation of evaluating the talent we have on the field, whether guys are performing, who's taking steps and strides. We've seen some good things this year. I think the way we finished is probably will leave a bitter taste in everybody's mouth. But big picture-wise, we think we're in a good place. It's an attractive job. It's a system that's very talented. We've got young players like Fernando Tatis, Chris Paddock, that have shown that they belong in the major leagues and have a chance to be quality players here going forward. We've got more guys of similar ilk coming in the system. So we're optimistic. We're excited. we're realistic that we've got some real steps that we have to make in the next few months.
So a couple more questions.
Seemed like Andy was very hands-on with the development side of things here as well. Is he the legacy behind in terms of the young players that we're starting to see coming up?
Yeah, Andy. Andy loved. Again, like he loved the seeing those minor league game reports. He loved talking with Sam Gainey, Ben Sestanovich, the minor league staff. That's always part of it, though. I think we're always going to look for a major league manager. They're not two separate entities. It's a whole organization. It's a whole system. It works best when you have you have continuity and you have people that are on the same page. Andy was he enjoyed that aspect of it. We're going to make sure that whatever manager we put in is definitely a big part of that as well going forward.
This is now the second manager that you fired. How important is it for you to get this next hiring right, given the expectations of the fans, the payroll, and your ownership?
Yeah, it's a big decision. You don't you don't want to be sitting here in this spot again. I think got to make sure that that we get somebody. We feel like we have a talented roster. We feel like they have talent in the organization. We've got to get somebody here that ultimately gets that talent to play out on the field. I think Ron, myself, understand this is a crucial hire going forward, and it'll be a good process. It'll be detailed, and it's an important decision for us.
And one last question, guys.